Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today we're joined by a breakout team, Outtake. Outtake are building cyber agents for every digital threat. There's a strong founding team from Palantir and ex-founders. They're closely collaborating with the team at OpenAI and solving one of cyber's biggest challenges. Series A backed, heart of New York, making a bang already, and I've got a tasty trio with me, Thomas, Yahweh, and David. Guys, thanks for coming on. David, I'm going to come to you first. Give us a bit of an intro into you, your background.
Great. Thank you, Elliot. Really excited to be here. Excited for this. Yeah, I think for me, I would just kind of give the context where I come from kind of a long line of engineering and building in my family. Um, my dad taught me poker when I was 5 years old, and I then tried to go and teach my grandmother. And I've always been interested in sort of these technical, maybe adversarial game theory sort of things, and cybersecurity and AI is like at the cutting edge of that, and that's really energizing for me. Thomas, you wanna take it next?
Yeah. So I'm Thomas. I similarly have a long background of wanting to do technical engineering stuff, but it really sort of kicked off when graduated college. I went into quant for a little bit, and I found that to be challenging but boring. And I wanted to do something that I found was like much more invigorating, and that was actually having like an impact that I found was positive and useful. And so obviously I went into crypto for a little bit and running a company there. That's a joke. And then when I decided that wasn't it either, that's when I came to Outtake and realized that at Outtake we had the ability to work on something super technical and interesting that we also found had a very positive impact for our customers
Cool.
and Java. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Jiahui. I similarly had a whole family of engineers. And so growing up, I always thought I'd be doing engineering. And after graduating, I picked Palantir to start my career, actually attracted by the mission of making the world a better place. In Palantir's word is save the Shire. And as cringe as it may sound, it was actually very motivating. And so spent 6.5 years there building all sorts of different compute system and figure out how to scale the platform so that it can help more people. And after that, went to Notion a little bit, trying to figure out how to build a useful product that's pleasant to use. And yeah, just joined Outtake about a year ago, and very excited about the mission that we also tell everyone a little bit more about.
Love it. I could feel the energy coming into the office, and all three of you were like, right, sit down. Let's talk a little bit about what we're building, and we're going to get into that. And David, I think you did a really good job of talking to me and explaining the mission and who Outtake are. So take the mic, take it away, give us some idea of who Outtake are, what you're building.
Yeah, great. What I actually want to do first is kind of level up a little bit and just talk about the like broader problem here, and then we can unpack the sort of solution. It's a problem that frankly anyone listening is probably aware of these sorts of scams and how things have evolved very rapidly since really the advent of LLMs, and as those have continued to improve. One way that I really think about what we're doing is, so we have this revolutionary technology. It's kind of come in with sort of two classes of consequences. The first is that we are solving a class of problems that traditionally have been a lot harder to solve and would usually require some sort of intellectual thinking or maybe a human in the loop. And there's this whole class of problems. Think about accounting or other sort of tasks like that, where you can now have an LLM come in and do that work. That's really exciting. Um, on the other hand, there's also new problems that are kind of created because of this technology. And the one that we're specifically thinking about is the ability for basically the mass production of, um, scammy like content, right? So this is impersonations. This is like somewhat truthful, but also false information. These are attacks or influence operations on different brands and individuals. there's just a really wide range of like sort of malicious intended content that's being generated and like thrown into the internet. And so our sort of mission at its root is to try to address this problem. And what we're coming at it from is basically a lens of sort of the humans that are involved, right? And so if you think about the heart of what these attackers are trying to do, it's really they're trying to basically convince or deceive or tell a lie in a way online and have people buy into that, whether that's employees or customers or investors or partners or whatever it is. People with access, people with value, and they're basically the targets of these sort of mass produce really high quality attacks. And so like no longer is it your grandma's getting scammed, it's now that your grandma can go into ChatGPT and create a scam or something like that. Not picking on them, any LLM could kind of produce something like that. And so what we're setting out to do is basically build a suite of products that address this issue. I think we'll dive into those more, but hopefully that gives like a high level of the mission here.
Yeah, it's sublime context. It is really good context. We've set the scene, the space that you're in. Thomas, you caught my attention. You were really passionate about the AI landscape, the speed in which some of these attacks are developing, even from scratch. So almost set the scene on what kind of attacks, the speed we're seeing in these attacks. You're even quite passionate about the AGI world. So do you want to give your perspective on those three things?
Yeah, definitely. I think David has alluded to this quite a bit, but the idea here is that when we have AI that's like sort of accelerating our ability to build really cool and interesting stuff, and that's what most people focus on. But there's also like an entire ecosystem of, let's call them, bad actors that are also sort of benefiting from the advancement in AI. I think what a lot of people that are not in cybersecurity don't understand is that this ecosystem is really deep. So it's not just with AI. There are like phishing kits that are being mass produced and mass distributed across the dark web, and even on WhatsApp and Telegram. There's fraudulent LLMs that are being developed by these actors that are then being sold on the dark web. The famous one's called Fraud GPT. So this ecosystem is accelerating at roughly the same pace as the AI quote unquote for good is accelerating. And so our challenge is being one step ahead, right? So this adversarial game is where this really comes in. I think maybe a good way that we could explain this is via an example. So let's imagine you want to run a social engineering campaign, and the way that you're going to do this is using the latest AI tools. So you're using Fraud LLM or Fraud GPT or whatever, and you're also going to go and purchase those phishing kits, which are really cheap. So now you have a phishing kit that produces hundreds of Twitter accounts or creates hundreds of emails, and then you're writing all these emails and posts and whatever, and that's all with Fraud LLM that has context on the person you're trying to impersonate or the brand you're trying to impersonate. And then you fire those all out into the world in an automated way. So in maybe less than an hour, with a few dollars, you can have thousands of impersonating profiles on social media. You can send thousands of emails. So that's accelerated in the last few years. It's going to continue to accelerate. And our mission is to sort of be one step ahead in preventing and dismantling those attacks. So when you ask like about AGI, I think we have a unique perspective on AGI, which is, for our purposes, AGI is here. It's been here for probably a year or so. And AGI is just, can someone use these LLMs to trick like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people into believing that the thing that they're looking at is real when it isn't, right? So from that definition, AGI is here. And so our question is not like, oh, when is AGI coming? The question is our AGI going to be better than the AGI that the bad actors are using? That's the real question for us.
Yeah, I think also what surprised me the scamming economy is so large, and the cost impact for some of your customers, people who I'm sure aren't your customers, is so vast. I think that's what shocked me. Help us understand a little bit more about that, and maybe even help us understand a bit more about your suite of products and how you actually service some of your customers.
Yeah, I'll take this, and then Jawway, maybe you can expand a bit on like the product side. I think there's like the direct cost to industry, and then there's like actually a bunch of hidden costs that are really hard to quantify. I mean, the like most obvious one is when a breach happens, and we've seen, hey, like CO impersonation lead to wire fraud, sort of sending money. Unfortunately, we also had real-time payments really introduced to the global economy during COVID, and so a lot of those things are actually harder to sort of remediate and get back to the rightful owner. So I mean that's the like obvious one, but below this you kind of start to get an erosion of trust generally out there on the web, right? Where so okay, maybe customers are churning more frequently because they're receiving scams from a company that's not even aware that these scams are coming out. The brands are losing value because they're like not able to actually use that brand value and go and like have good connections, good relationships with those customers. And then you start to think about the sort of like regulatory fallout from this. What do we actually do? Are we really confident necessarily that regulation is going to be sort of the right solution and not just bring more friction to this, the broader industry? And then it's just like, how do you how do you think about the hidden tolls beyond that? If we have like regulation that comes in or industry drag because people are very like hesitant to, I don't know, try new products, to reach out to strangers online that might have valuable information. I think you end up having a bit of a sort of like slower innovation broadly. I mean, maybe that's a bit of a reach, but if I have to constantly worry about this sort of like what I'm interacting with is real or not, then I think you have a pretty like large sort of coefficient against general innovation in the economy, and I'm pretty serious about that based on what we're seeing. Um, okay, so that doesn't sound great. I think let me quickly introduce maybe some of the ideas or some of the products that we're working on to start to tackle this thing. Obviously, this is a really massive issue. I would really think of this, kind of going back to earlier, we talked about how humans are the targets of these attacks. And so, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we have seen attacks as well that are actually kind of generated to convince an LLM of something. That's kind of a different class of things. Let's just focus on the human target for now. And really, we're trying to build a suite of products that is around like human risk security, right? And so it's like talking about all those people in the chain. It's like, okay, what are the set of products that we need to actually secure these sort of connections and the humans involved? I'll give you like three pillars. So the first one, if we're working on behalf of a company, we're basically, hey, we need to understand all the entities that we want to protect. So the first pillar is really understanding. I think in the industry, it's often called open source intelligence or OSINT. What we're doing is getting a lay of the land, and we're going out into the web, into public data sets, and we're basically looking for any mention or any sort of indication of that entity out there in the world. And we're going to go out there, we're going to kind of actively monitor these things as well, and we're going to build up a landscape of sort of what's going on with this entity. And so for an example, like with OpenAI or something, you would have their products, the execs, and maybe the brand itself. um, and so once we've understand everything, then we're actually going to go through the process of removing low trust nodes here. And I would roughly think about this as like defending. And so we go out onto an app store and we see a ChatGPT sort of clone or something like that. These are things that we're going to try and get removed. A quick aside is I was at Outtake early enough when Alex, the founder, was like flying out to San Francisco, to LA, and while I was still kind of in New York building out the product, he was making all these sorts of, you know, building relationships with the platforms that are hosting these things. And so today we actually have relationships with the top, you know, 20 so platforms that are hosting these things. We're continuing to kind of build those out so we can actually get these things removed very quickly. Okay, so we have the first pillar is understand, the second pillar is sort of defend. The third pillar I think is a little more forward looking. We've alluded to it here. We have this like unstoppable train of AI innovation coming at us. And so we're actually really thinking we're thinking hard, not hardly, about how do we kind of change the landscape to be more in our favor, generally as like people, users of the web. And really I think about that as securing identity. And so, or verifying identity. It's actually, when I send something out there, can I actually sign it or stamp it and have some authenticity along with it so that it's real by default, right? And so there isn't a detection step that has to go into it. And so I think we're going to expand into all this. Sorry for rambling a little bit. I think Jawei, you maybe can go into a bit more details here.
Yeah. As everyone have said, these are the problems that have existed for a long time. But with LLM, the scope and how sophisticated things are have really exploded. So historically, how company will deal with this issue is they probably have a team of contractor that's going on to social media or other places to see what are the potential impersonator of my company and my account that maybe I can go report to the platform. And maybe there's a whole team of customer success people that's intaking all the complaint from customers saying, I got scammed, and those people claim to be your company and give me money back, things like that. With the attacker becoming a lot more sophisticated and also just increasing the volume of scam, it is no longer enough to just have human. It's really, really hard to scale the team of human, and that's where we decided this is a place where AI agent is really going to excel at. And for the things that David just talked about, the understanding and then defend part, we built agent to handle a lot of this automatically. And I'll walk through a similar example as what David just described, but also explain a little bit more how our agent help in this. For a lot of customer, usually they have specific security concerns. Some of them can be there's a lot of impersonator of them on the internet, or there can be a lot of people are complaining about their platform is not secure, which is actually caused by impersonator. So our agent will take this high level topic and then dispatch a bunch of worker and go search across the internet to gather all of this information. And after you have each piece of content, it will it will analyze and classify the content to understand what type of security threat it has, or maybe it doesn't have any threat, which is great. You're just being mentioned. And depends on what type of security threats there are, and we will do different type of action. So one example David just talked about is for some of the threats that we known for a while and have really good solution, we have fully automated that. Like for auto impersonator, once we have high confidence that this is an impersonator, we have an agent that automate the whole reporting and neutralization process to neutralize this threat from different type of platform. And for some other type of security topic that we may decide is the best to flag to our customers so that they can do further investigation. For example, if we're seeing a huge spike on people pretending to be certain financial institution and scam their customer, we may want to just flag it to the customer and help them understanding the impact. When did it start, and is there any shared trend, so they can work with law enforcement better and figure out who are the people that's behind this. And yeah, these are some very fascinating problem, and we definitely had a lot of technical challenges that I can also dive in a little bit.
I'd love that. I remember sitting in the office and talking about the search space that you index on, using the best tools available, building for precision, accuracy. Help us understand, some of the engineering challenges that sit underneath what you've built at Outtake.
Yeah, the way I think about it is we need to figure out both the scaling and the intelligence for our agent. And a lot of time, these are actually pretty tightly bundled together. Exactly as we said, we have a problem of our search space is really, really large. For example, if we want to figure out what are all the scam domain for a certain financial institute, the candidate set is actually the whole internet, every possible URL. So how do you take this infinite amount of search space and very quickly narrow it down so that we don't waste compute resources and we can process a huge amount of data really fast, but also we don't miss any high risk website and still leave it out and keep scamming people. So these are the things that throughout the past couple of years we have built a lot of domain knowledge. And one thing that's exciting but also scary is our opponent, all of this attacker also getting smarter and smarter. Every time we go to security conferences and hear what are all the new technique that this attacker are using, is really scary. So we're also have to constantly teach our agent about all the new methods so that it can go through this process still effectively without making it cost too much. And so this is kind of on the search space side. The scaling problem is huge, but also on the after we get a high signal candidate set, how to extract signals and insights and pattern so that we can surface all of this to our customer and make it very actionable is again a scaling plus intelligence problem. The understanding product we just mentioned, where we want to help our customer understand what are different type of threats. This for a lot of our more famous or more controversial customer means every day we're scanning millions pieces of content. So how can you effectively find the small trends that a customer doesn't even know they should be monitoring is something we found really valuable, even though it's very technical challenging. But I think we have found a good way and our customer have been getting a lot of value from that.
Love that. Would either of you want to jump in, David or Thomas?
Yeah, I want to jump in on specifically, one key challenge for us is there's the search space of like the entire internet, and I think Jawi put it very eloquently how hard that is. But then once we get all the stuff that's actually relevant to one of the entities we're protecting, now another question we have is what should we do with it, right? And so LLMs are generally, I think, this is common knowledge at this point that LLMs are bad at sort of value judgments. And so if you say, "Oh, LLM, like, is this bad?" Like, it has no idea what bad means to you, and so it's going to give you slop. So a really key challenge for us is defining very clearly what does bad mean? What laws is this violating? What terms of service is this violating? What kind of action should you take moving forward, you the customer? And so we need to take sort of like ambiguous value judgments, which we don't want to do like right off the bat, and we need to break them down into very specific atomic problems that LLMs and agents are actually well equipped to solve. And so it's not like, we get a million pieces of content, we just like go and try to get rid of all of it. Like that would not be reasonable. And it would probably be bad. So what we need to do instead is understand what exactly is the problem for each thing that comes in. Is there a problem? What is the problem? And what is the action we're going to take moving forward? So we have to like sort of break this down into like essentially a very intricate decision tree of all the possible actions that we need to take, all the possible signals that we need to extract, and convert sort of what can be perceived as a judgment problem into very objective sort of sub classifications. So that's another one of our key challenges that I think, over the last couple years we've learned a lot of like secrets of sort of how to do this well. And it is only because we're able to do this well at a high precision that anyone, whether it's customers or platforms or otherwise, listen to us when we say something is bad, because we need to collect evidence that describes very explicitly what is bad about it and why.
Coupling a number of your points, the intelligence, the nature of the scale that you're operating at, plus the decision tree that you've just mentioned, this feels like it's a constant moving target, which is why it's interesting, which is why it's really challenging. That must be difficult to deal with the threats continuing to build over, the next 6 months, let's say, unknowing as to what's to come.
Yeah, I could speak to that. I mean, I think you're kind of getting at at two things here. I mean, the first thing is this is a really exciting. I think any engineer who really kind of is in the space because of their curiosity and passion is really motivated by these sort of pure competition problems. We're not we're not talking about like competition in the market. We're talking about competition literally in this sort of like objective to scam people and rip people off, and it actually does feel really fulfilling to be on the sort of the right side of that, and to get to work on that. I think the other thing you're talking about is, okay, if you have a moving target, are you precise? Are you actually hitting the right thing every time? And that is like really important for us as well. Of course, there's a lot of like players that are different entities that we work with that really trust us to do that job, and so it's very important to us. Um, I think Thomas was starting to allude to this. I mean, I'm going to expand on it a little more. The you know what I really think about when we're talking about trusting LLMs for this sort of responsibility is, okay, there's two things. There's sort of the quality of the context, and then there's the like definition of the task. And we can kind of break them apart one by one. The context issue I'll come back to. The task one is really it's I actually think this is kind of goes hand in hand with sort of the quality of the LLMs. And so as they evolve, the tasks will get more ambitious with what you can do. But what I've found and what we found at Outtake is that if an LLM responds like inconsistently, you've tuned it correctly, you've set the right parameters, and it's inconsistently responding, or it's answering a question that maybe a human would not, or a set of humans wouldn't agree on, then you probably should not be relying on that as part of your sort of data pipeline to actually come to one of these high impact decisions. And so defining the tasks and really simplifying those tasks into components, and then maybe coming up with some way to bring those together is a really important part. And then you can iterate on those tasks as well. On the context side, I think we've talked about a lot of different things. What I want to just introduce is one more concept, which is really this like the threat graph broadly. And so when we look at one piece of content, when we look at one account, or even like a Telegram channel, maybe in isolation that thing doesn't actually look malicious, or maybe it does, but you can't really figure out kind of who's behind her, or what to sort of remediate there. And what we've found is that there's a lot of sort of connective tissue that is underlying a lot of the attacks that we see. And the reason is they need to attract their victims. They need to actually pull people in to run their sort of playbook. And so we've seen really advanced sort of a lot of these things will be pushing people to private messaging channels, so Telegram, WhatsApp groups, stuff like that. We've seen attacks where the like WhatsApp history is completely generated, where so I'm entering a group chat. It looks like a group chat, but really I'm the only victim here. There's 5 other people who are all in on the scam, and they've generated a whole history of messages to like make it convincing that this is really the investment group, or this is really the place where I can double my Bitcoin or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but and so having that connective tissue as well on top as context for the agent is crucial. And if you don't have that, you're going to make the wrong decisions at times, and you're going to miss key sort of opportunities to like really fix something quickly before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, I bet. It'd be good to get under the hood of the culture of building at Outtake. And from each of your own perspectives, I'll come to you, Thomas, first. It'd be good to get a sense of what it's like to work and build at Outtake.
Yep, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head earlier when you were saying, oh, like it must be kind of like stressful or interesting to have the threat landscape change every few weeks or months, right? And that's certainly true. And so if there's one thing that really defines sort of culture at Outtake is being extremely fast paced. I think we all find ourselves constantly seeing like PRs where I'm like deleting 10,000 lines of code that I wrote like 6 months ago because now it's completely irrelevant and there's a completely new and better way of doing it. So you have to be like emotionally prepared for the fact that you're constantly going to have to rework and retry and iterate all the time because that's what your adversaries are doing. So that's like sort of a mindset that we all have. Um, that aside, I mean, I think, or sort of coupled with that is sort of agency. And so we need to be really fast. We need to be sort of low emotion, right? Being able to like think about things very clearly, but also we need to be really high agency in terms of sort of it's impossible for you to like know everything that needs to be done all the time, especially in these sort of fast-paced adversarial environments. And so what you really need is every individual, every engineer at Outtake needs to have the agency to really own some part of the product and a meaningful slice of our infrastructure, because they are the ones that have high context on the specific problem that they're solving. And so they need to also have the agency to go and do whatever is the best solution immediately without having to go through layers of red tape or bureaucracy. So we have something that we refer to internally as power to the edges. And that's like very true. Every single engineer at Outtake, almost immediately, literally the day they arrive, has a lot of agency and autonomy over what they need to work on and how they're going to go about it. And no one is top down telling you, this is how you should do this. This is what you should do. This is what you should focus on. It has to go the other way around. You have to come and say, this is what I should work on. This is why it matters, because you as the engineer working on the problem have the most context, and the context is changing way too often for your manager's manager to really know what you should be working on. So if I had to summarize, it's fast paced, emotionally, centered, and high agency.
Great energy. Jarway?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Thomas said is definitely the key thing we're looking for when we're hiring new engineers. And just want to say our problem space again, because I think that's what distinguish what type of engineer Outtake is hiring a little bit different from other startup is our domain is constantly evolving. What you know 6 months ago will no longer be true. And the knowledge and skill you accumulated in the past 6 months, you have to adapt it. And this can be challenging for a lot of people. So we really want people that is low ego and willing to be proven wrong, even though this is something that was true even a few months ago. And similarly, we also want people that's always curious and excited about the constant changes. This can be scary for a lot of people, but for some other people, this is exciting because they can continue to learn and adapt what they know about the world. And the last thing I'll probably say is we're still at a stage that we love people that's willing to go very broad. We call it generalist with depth. So for a lot of things we're doing, we want people to be able to be flexible and go dig around a new area, new domain, and not hold on to the baggage. Oh, I'm the front end expert. I shouldn't be looking at why this query is not working. So this type of ability of able to be flexible, go broad, and go deep when necessary has also been super, super helpful in building a fast paced and also constantly changing domain.
Love that. I'm hearing a lot of the same things, obviously, but two very different perspectives as well. David?
Yeah, I think they've kind of said it. They've said it all. The thing I'll add is, a lot of us really view this as kind of our life's work at this point. We take it very seriously, and as a result, we're here every day. So we're in office 5 days a week. Um, Part of that as well means that we kind of want to enjoy coming in. Like we want to have fun with our coworkers. We want to actually be in an environment where it's easy to show up to work and it's exciting and it's actually motivating to get out of bed and make it down to the office and work alongside these people solving this really interesting problem. So I think I'm not gonna amend or say anything differently than what's already been said, and I'll just kind of add that piece of like community is really important to us and culture as well.
Yeah, we definitely prefer people that's funny.
Even to add my own 2 cents, seeing you all live in action, seeing the energy, it is true. I do get that real sense of camaraderie, the social mission, and that's what I love about your mission. I'm going to be asking you in the next couple of moments about where Outtake are going over the next 6 months, but also where's the AI landscape going, social engineering, hacking landscape going. Yes, it's quite a wide topic, but where are the areas that you've got in your crosshair that you're thinking, A, the business needs to be or wants to be, but also the space is going to be, and their bets?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely start just talking about what the future looks like in our heads right now, and obviously, as we said, the future changes all the time, and so this is what our current thesis is, but hopefully, like the broad level of it isn't going to change too much. The table stakes is that our existing products need to get 10x better, and that, as I said, it's table stakes, right? So our open source intelligence product needs to get 10x better. We need to be 10x better at finding the right information. We need a 10x scale. We need 10x the quality of the reports that we provide to our users and the contextualization that we do. And then our digital risk protection product also needs to get 10x better. Our ability to identify what actually needs to be neutralized and our ability to neutralize it needs to just be faster, more accurate, more predictable. Table stakes. Um, Probably one of the more interesting bets that we're thinking of in sort of the 3 to 6 month horizon is something David alluded to earlier, which is, there's all these sort of peer-to-peer protocols with which we communicate, the main ones being SMS and email. A lot of social engineering attacks originate via email. And I think it's something like 60% of social engineering losses start with an email. It's usually talked to as like spear phishing is one class of those problems. And so something that we are thinking a lot about is how do we help secure those peer-to-peer protocols, in particular email at first. And that's a product that we call Verify. And there is a broader vision for Verify, which is, as David said, how do we strengthen and empower the high trust nodes so that they don't need to be sort of detected anyways? Like we can just baseline trust the things that we're seeing in the interactions we have with those nodes. But to begin with, there is something that we want to do on email that allows us to do that, which is what we call Verify for email. And the idea of Verify for email is like email was a messaging protocol that was created in the 70s, and it had no sort of security or authentication built into it. Anyone was supposed to like be able to just spin up an email and start messaging each other and receiving these messages. Nowadays, we use it for very, very, very sensitive information, and so there is sort of a gap there. And our one of our bets is to say, hey, we're already like doing all the work of finding what the low and high trust nodes are and then dealing with them. But there is a long-term sort of systemic solution that we can also build towards that allows us to sort of remove the possibility of that threat in the first place. And so we're trying to explore that very systemic base layer solution via this product. And at the, I'll just give a very brief description. Basically, AI makes it easier to scam, it lowers the cost of fraud. Cryptography does the opposite. Cryptography massively increases the friction for you to do fraud. And so this product is cryptographic, and it essentially allows our users to sign emails that they send and bind their identity biometrically or otherwise to that email, to that specific email, so that anyone else using the product, when they open that email, they see, oh, this was signed at moment of send by this person that I trust, and it's conveyed very clearly in the email. That way, I can sort of rely on that verification, that signature, to know what I should and shouldn't trust. And so the long-term vision there is that by building in, a higher fidelity uh, identity into these emails, and it doesn't have to be just emails, but that's where we're starting. Um, Building that sort of base layer identity into our interactions allows us to trust each other again. And so that's sort of the high level. That's one of the bets that we're playing towards.
Love that. I can feel that as well, because I think we all can be so closely connected to scams. And I think that's a fantastic idea. Fantastic idea.
And I mean, it's been tried before, right? There's a few protocols called SMIME, which try to sort of encrypt your emails in this way, or GPG and PGP are similar. There's other email protocols like SPF, DKIM, DMARC that all try to do some version of this. Obviously, we just think that we have a better solution, and so we're super excited to eventually be like much louder about that. That's one of our bets.
Yeah, and maybe I can jump in. I think the like high level here, and Thomas is spot on that like we're definitely trying to think of some of the more systemic solutions. But I mean, just kind of coming back to the diagnosis, it's like, okay, we know these attacks are going to be more sophisticated, we know they're going to increase business costs. um as Thomas mentioned, we have a strong demand for these products. to the point where we really need to like sort of iron down the classic startup MVPs that we made, or like getting production use, and those need to be like really top of the line security products, which is a process that we're in the midst of going through now. But I think on the like industry level, there's a few maybe trends I can call out. So the one is that it's my belief that consumer awareness of what I would call like unprotected brands versus protected brands will start to grow and be like something that consumers are aware of in the next year or so, where it will become obvious that the sort of company that I'm interacting with does not have this sort of protection, because the attackers will sort of flock to those places, and it will be just like really noisy and hard to sort of interact there. Uh, but maybe outside of the business context is even more interesting and frankly concerning. It's that like we have seen a lot of political violence, a lot of influence operations recently, um, where there are elements here of like these sorts of attacks, and there are before and after very different sort of um, insights and like ways that we can help using our products there. And so it's very important for us to kind of be a part of the conversation of the systemic solutions, as Thomas was mentioning, really understanding the challenges that victims are facing, and helping wherever we can make an impact, right? So the culture that we just described is purely made and sort of built intentionally for this crisis, this opportunity. And so that's really exciting. That's where we're placing our bets. We're going to keep our ear on the ground, and we'll see what happens. I mean, this world is crazy, and we're here for it.
You've all been terrific. I knew this would be the case. I think coming in to see you all, seeing the energy, I knew this episode would bring some energy. So I want to say a massive thanks. And for people listening, we've touched on the culture, we've touched on the engineering challenges and the bar that they set internally to improve, be better. We've heard it from all three of them. So if you are listening, go and talk to the team. Reach out to David, Jarway, Thomas. Look at their careers site, or pester them on LinkedIn. Whichever you choose to do, reach out to the team to learn a little bit more about what they're building and recommend some friends. Again, I knew you'd bring the energy. I've doubled down on that. But I want to say a massive thanks to all three of you for coming to join the podcast.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Elliot.
thanks, Elliot.
You too.
Absolute pleasure. For people listening, the likes, shares, subscribership, all of that good stuff keeps this little ecosystem buzzing around, so I get awesome people like this. And again, a massive thank you. It's bye for now.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.